Chapter 28. The Christmasaurus Stays. "Now, I think we should be taking you back to your father," said Santa. "It's Christmas morning, and I can't imagine he'll find any happiness in waking up to discover you've disappeared in the night." All of a sudden, William noticed that everything was starting to fade and go all fuzzy, like the world around him was ceasing to exist. He'd never fainted before, but he thought to himself that this might be what fainting would feel like. The magical place in which he was sitting was getting fainter and fainter, and suddenly he could see distant snowfields and mountains where the wonderful buildings had been. "Quickly, William," Santa's voice said from somewhere in the fading fuzz. "Take a bite of the candy cane." William looked at the red and white treat with his name running through it that he'd forgotten he was still holding. It was the only thing that hadn't seemed to fade out of existence. He looked back up to see nothing. Absolutely everything had gone. The sleigh, the reindeer, the elves, everything had vanished. "Hello?" he called out into the frozen emptiness. He quickly popped the stick of candy into his mouth, and as he tasted its sweet deliciousness on his tongue, the magical world reappeared before his eyes. "What just happened?" asked William as Santa and the elves all re-evaporated in the same spot they were standing in just before. "Well, William, lots of people would love to come to this place. Unfortunately, not all of those people are nice people, and we don't want horrid rotters turning up at the North Pole. No, no, no. So we protected it with magic," Santa explained. "You see, the North Pole is in another dimension. It's somewhere between imagination and make-believe, but not quite as far as unthinkable, and if you get to not doable, then you've definitely gone too far. To get here, you have to be invited, and to be invited, you have to be good, truly good, through and through. When we have guests, if they're truly good, they are presented with one of these deliciously magical cosmos-converting candy canes." Santa pointed to the half-eaten candy cane in William's hand. "All they have to do is lick them, and they are filled with wonderful tasty magic that allows them to see our world." "So what happens when they've eaten all the candy cane?" asked William curiously. "Then their time here is up. Poof, pop, gone," Santa said merrily. "It's the only way anyone can get in or out. Quite a genius idea, actually. Thought of that one myself." William looked at what was left of the candy cane in his hand and suddenly wished it were a lot bigger so that he could stay longer. Then he had a cheeky idea. He quickly covered his cosmos-converting candy cane with his hands and sneakily snapped off a small piece. He popped it up his pyjama sleeve, out of sight, then continued to suck on what was left in his hand. Now he had a way to get back here. "That way we can keep the rotten, horrible stinkers out," laughed Santa. "Of course, it hasn't always been like this. There was a time when any old troubler could wander up here willy-nilly." "Oh, Santa, that reminds me. There's something I need to tell you," said William, who'd almost forgotten about the evil hunter. William explained all about their night and the adventure they'd had, about how the hateful hunter and his hideous hound had tried to shoot them and hang their heads on his wall, about how he had believed that the Christmasaurus could fly and how he took off and flew all the way through the night to the North Pole. "By golly gumdrops," Santa said, "that does sound like an adventure. I'm afraid I know exactly the hunter you're talking about. Bony fingers? Yes. Lumpy white scar down his face? Yep. Smokes a horrid smelly pipe. That's him. How do you know him?" asked William. "Many Christmases ago, before the hunter was the hunter, when he was still just a little boy named Huxley, he was very exceptionally naughty. Think of yourself on your naughtiest day, and I bet that's nowhere close to Huxley on his best behaviour. He was so naughty that I had no choice but to put him on the naughty list, and I hate putting children on the naughty list," Santa explained. As Huxley grew, so did his naughtiness. In fact, as time went on, he became well and truly rotten. He was vicious and cruel and had discovered a rather horrible new hobby. He loved hunting animals. Even the family pets weren't safe when Huxley was around. Santa sat his huge bottom in the snow, getting himself comfortable for the next part of his story. William, the Christmasaurus, and all the elves were gathered round, listening closely to every word Santa said. He was a great storyteller. One particular Christmas Eve, Huxley's little brother was awake far past his bedtime. He was peering out of his bedroom window, hoping to catch a glimpse of me, and indeed he saw my sleigh soaring overhead. He cried out, waking Huxley, who dashed to the window. That, I'm afraid, was the moment he saw my beautiful reindeer for the first time. If only I had known, I would have taken a detour. As I was jollily plopping presents down the chimneys of the other children in the town, unbeknown to me, Huxley was hurriedly and horridly concocting a plan, and he did something unthinkably naughty. He persuaded his little brother to join him. As fast as they could, they scurried up the drainpipe and concealed themselves in the shadows of their rooftop before I arrived. When I landed on it, they cheekily crept into the back of my sleigh, keeping impossibly quiet. I was so full of Christmas jolliness, I totally missed them, Santa said, shaking his head. Huxley's mind was so rotten with greedy nastiness that when he got here, to this wonderfully magical place, he wanted it all. He wanted to take everything. Huxley, with his impressionable little brother following closely behind, snuck around the ranch, taking in all the wonderfully magical sights, smelling the wonderful smells. But there was already one thing on Huxley's mind, something in particular that he wanted, that he truly desired. What? William cried. What did he want? My magnificently magical flying reindeer, Santa said sadly, and he pointed to the incredible creatures still harnessed to the sleigh. They sneakily snuck their way to the stables, where Huxley made his brother climb on his shoulders and smashed the window. He was small enough then to climb through and open the door for Huxley to step inside. That nasty little worm wasted no time. His greed and his hunting instincts clicked into overdrive as he leapt onto the back of one of my magnificent deer. All of the elves gasped. Some even shrieked. He stole a flying reindeer, William said. Worse, Santa said. Whilst clinging to the back of the frightened deer, Huxley pulled out a small golden pocket knife that he'd stolen from his wealthy father and began to hack at the reindeer's antlers. But the deer wouldn't hold still. The deer launched high into the air inside the stables, smashing through the roof. Santa described it so well that it made William jump. His little brother, fearing for Huxley's life, grabbed hold of the deer's reins and tried to pull them back down, but the deer was too powerful for the young lad, and the boy's feet lifted off the ground as he too was pulled through the roof and into the sky. You can see a picture of it here. Santa paused and swallowed hard. William noticed that he was somehow not looking as jolly as he had, as though whatever he was about to say was really difficult. That's when things went from awfully dreadful to dreadfully awful. The young boy was so scared as he clung to the dangling reins in the sky that, in his panic, he began to wish the deer wouldn't fly. William felt his heart sink in his chest. He already knew what happened next. His wish came true, William said. Santa nodded. The deer came crashing to the ground, with Huxley and his brother too. That was the last time that magnificent reindeer ever flew. When the young boy cleared the snow away from his eyes, he saw Huxley standing wickedly over the grounded deer, clutching a piece of its antler in his hateful hand. And that's when I found them. What did you do? William asked. I had no choice, William, but to banish the boys from the North Pole. Forever, Santa said, and all the elves burst into harmonious sobs. Of course, that little rotter Huxley quickly shoved the piece of antler into his brother's trembling hands in an attempt to pin the blame on him. That's when it happened. I couldn't help it. A huge, thick teardrop formed in the corner of my eye, and as it rolled down my cheek, it froze and became a snowflake, floating through the air. The elves all paused in unison and took a breath before their tuneful sobbing continued. The snowflake was so full of my sadness that the very instant it landed on Huxley's shoulder, he disappeared from the North Pole. He vanished, said William. Banished, replied Santa. My tears are the only thing strong enough to do it. Then I looked into the eyes of Huxley's little brother, who held out the piece of antler in his hand. You must keep it, I told him, and let it remind you of what happened here tonight. Then a second tear plopped out of my eye, froze on the air, and banished the boy as he held the stolen antler to his heart. William thought Santa looked so sad that he might cry enough tears to banish him, the Christmasaurus, and every single one of the crowd of elves gathered around listening. What happened to them after they were banished? Said William curiously. Santa looked into William's eyes again, and William got the funny feeling that Santa was thinking carefully about what he was saying. Well, Huxley became that repulsive, evil, maliciously rotten skin bag you met tonight. Unfortunately, seeing my magnificent deer up close only fueled his obsession for rare animals and trophies. He's been trying to grab-nab one of my flying reindeer every year since, but he never gets close to him. Well, he got pretty close to grab-nabbing a flying dinosaur tonight, William said. That reminds me, said Santa, and he turned and faced the Christmasaurus. My dear little dinosaur, what the jingle were you doing in this young boy's house? The Christmasaurus looked ashamed. He stood and walked round to the back of William's wheelchair and pulled something large out from underneath the seat with his mouth. It was stuffy, its head peeking out of the wrapping paper. I don't believe my bogglers. You went all that way to get another look at this stuffed toy? You are a dongle-brained Wally-Chops dinosaur, aren't you? You could have been lost forever. It's not safe for you down there. You have to stay here. This is your home." The Christmasaurus quickly shuffled over to William and parked his scaly bottom next to his wheelchair, wagging his tail hopefully at Santa. "Oh, but Santa, can't the Christmasaurus stay with me? I promised to look after him," pleaded William. "I'm not mean and awful like that hunter." "I know you're not, William. You're a good, kind boy with a kind, good heart. But there are some nasty people out there, William. Nasty people like the hunter who would love to nab themselves a Christmasaurus. Up here with us is the only place he is safe, the only place that evil rotter can't find him." "But I know all about dinosaurs, and dinosaurs don't come from the North Pole," said William, desperate for the Christmasaurus to come home with him. "He might not be from here, but he belongs here," Santa said with a soft, wise smile. William knew he was right. As he looked around at all the magical creatures staring at him, elves, fairies, snowmen, narwhals, polar bears, even the mountains themselves seemed to be alive, he realised that this was the Christmasaurus's home. How could a flying dinosaur ever fit in anywhere other than the North Pole? It was the perfect place for him. The Christmasaurus knew it too. He wished he could see William every day, but he loved the North Pole with all his heart and could never leave. William and the Christmasaurus looked at each other in the eye. The Christmasaurus let out a long, sad huff and dipped his head to the ground. William hated goodbyes too. Santa placed a hand on the Christmasaurus's head and the other on William's shoulder and whispered, "A friend for Christmas is a friend forever." Suddenly, William felt as though the ground were moving. He looked down and saw that 8 elves had picked up his wheelchair and were hoisting him upwards towards the sleigh. It was Snozzletrump, Specklehamp, Sparklefoot, Sugarsnout, Starlump, Spudcheek, Snowcrump and Sprout, and they were singing, of course. "We're sending William on his way back home again this Christmas Day. He's seen a lot tonight for sure, from flying Christmas dinosaurs to evil hunters and their hounds. Then somehow this boy William found his way to this enchanted place, and from the look upon his face, he liked it. Well, of course he did. It's all a dream world for a kid. There's so much more to show you, but your time is done. You've seen enough. Now get back home and don't delay. Quick, hoist him up upon the sleigh." I've got Molly listening here too. She's desperate to hear the story. That's what I'm doing. She's looking at me and nudging me. Sorry. The elves finished singing with a large heave-ho, lifted William in his chair into Santa's sleigh. Santa hopped at his feet and did some sort of cartwheel thingy and plonked his enormous bottom next to William. He really was an oddly jolly man. Amongst the crowd of elves, William saw the shimmering blue head of the Christmasaurus. As the dinosaur took a step towards him, he could see that William was crying. His tears froze instantly on his cheeks, and tiny dusty snowflakes fell away. "Goodbye, Christmasaurus," William said, suddenly finding it difficult to speak. "I'm so glad I met you." At that, the Christmasaurus bent his head down low and gave William a goodbye hug. William wished he didn't have to say goodbye, but he knew it was the right thing. And sometimes the right things to do are the hardest things to do. He wiped a tear away from his cheek as Santa wound up the old gramophone again. Glorious music lifted the sleigh from the floor as the elves and the Christmasaurus took a step back. Santa took a deep breath and was just about to sing when he looked at William and said with a cheeky smile, "You can join in with if you know the words." And with that he burst into song, and the reindeer galloped excitedly into the warm northern lights once again. William couldn't believe his eyes or his ears. He was sitting in Santa's sleigh, flying into the night sky with Santa himself sitting next to him, singing. He looked over the side of the sleigh and gave one final wave to his new dinosaur friend. Just before the magical effects of the candy cane wore off, he noticed a lone reindeer below, standing gracefully on the roof of the snow ranch, with a piece of its left antler missing. William watched as the reindeer clopped towards the grand chimney breast that puffed glittery smoke into the air. It raised a golden glowing hoof and gently dipped it into the smoke, and at the slightest touch the golden glow spread like warm magic up through the clouds, transforming them from billows of smoke into thick shafts of coloured light dancing through the sky. William watched as the wonderful world below faded into nothing, and wondered if perhaps that deer, too, had found its true desire in the northern lights. He hoped so.